We're going back to being 12 years old with this one. Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. Recently, I finally moved into my own house, and so a lot of my old books from homes that I left years and years ago are now here and on my new bookshelves now that I actually have space for them. A lot of these are probably going to end up in charity shops since I've kind of outgrown them now, but I thought today I would go through a stack of my favourite young adult middle grade novels. And these are ones that I'm very likely going to keep, and maybe I'll even reread them one day. So without further ado, let's get into this little stack of mine. To start us off, we have Noughts and Crosses, which is arguably not middle grade. It's one of the books for older kids in this stack, and it literally says on the back, not suitable for younger readers. But I have seen this for sale not just in the young adult section, but in the kind of middle grade section for 14, 15 year olds. And I think a lot of people read it when they were about 14, 15 at school. So I think technically this counts as middle grade. The characters are also like 13 and 15 for like half of this novel. So it suits younger readers as well. So many of you have probably read Noughts and Crosses. It is like an absolute classic at this point. This is about a world similar to our own. I think it's kind of based in the UK, but it's a bit unclear. And basically, there's racial tensions as there are in our world, but the races are reversed. So the Noughts, which are the white people, are the lower class, and the black people, the Crosses, are the higher class. The Noughts get called slurs like blankers and face a lot of discrimination based on not having melanin in their skin. They live in poverty and they form a lot of the working class. They work in the service industry and in coal mining and these kind of jobs. Whereas the Crosses, the black people, they tend to go to university, have a good education, go into, more high powered jobs, politics, things like this. And this is a story about a boy and a girl, a knot and a cross, who are friends in their childhood. They develop some romantic feelings for each other, and it explores how these racial tensions affect their relationship over the course of their life. Halfway through the book, we have a jump of a few years, 2 or 3 years, where the girl is like 16 or 17 and the boy is like 19. And at that point of the book, it gets a bit more adult. There is more of a militia group kind of doing terrorist acts and protesting the treatment of the Noughts. And I think this book is so fantastic. I think by just having that simple race switch, it illuminates a lot of just obvious discriminations that you're a little bit blind to in everyday life. For example, there's a scene in here where one of the Noughts, they get admitted to the Crosses school. There's about 5 of them that are admitted to this school, where they then face a lot of racism and bullying. One of them gets hit and gets a cut on their head and is given a plaster, but the plaster they're given is a black plaster and it stands out against their white skin quite significantly. And I'd never thought about that before. A lot of the plasters you see for sale in Boots and whatever, they are the colour of white skin. And so on black skin, they don't come across as skin toned and, camouflaging as they're supposed to and as they're designed. I don't think I've ever seen like black plasters for sale, even to this day. And even though it seems like quite a small and insignificant thing, it really shows how systematic racial biases are. And it's not even necessarily malicious, but it's just clear that there aren't maybe many black people working in that industry to go, hey, have you considered that we might need plasters for people of different skin tones? You see the same thing in the makeup industry whereby there's like a million different shades for white skin and then like one that's like the black one. A lot of companies are getting better at providing a like wider array of black skin tones and foundations, but it's just more of the same thing. It's just that, black skin and black people haven't really been considered when these products have been designed. And as a white person growing up in a majority white country, these just things that will never cross your mind. And the good thing about reading this book at that young age of 14 or 15, it brings these things to conscious awareness. And it means that you're in a position to, maybe do something about it going forward and at least be mindful that it's an issue. Beyond being an important book thematically, it's also just a really moving story. The relationship between all of the characters is really interesting. They're all very well fleshed out. It explores a lot of other dark topics like grief and addiction, and the ending is just an absolute gut punch. They actually adapted this for TV and made it into the TV series, and they totally changed the ending and made it like kind of a happy ending. And I was so devastated because the ending to this book is not happy and it's really devastating and it really stuck with me. It really had a big impact, and like I could cry thinking about it now. But the TV series just fucking ruined it, and that makes me mad. Probably because they wanted to do more seasons when they could have just followed the book series, because there's like 4 books. There might even be 5. Like there might have even been more come out since I kind of grew out of the series. But yeah, they didn't need to ruin the story by changing the ending. That was so dumb. I love the book so much that I even bought the play version recently. And just what I was talking about with the plasters, they've managed to show that on the cover quite nicely with that specific example. So I'm glad that's a specific example that I used to discuss this book. And the play is really good as well. I'd recommend it. Obviously, it's designed to be watched, and that would probably be better seeing the actors and how they chose to stage it and everything. But it was a good read. I could imagine how it would be staged, but does lose some of the impact just because it's fitted into a couple of hours show rather than having the time and space to see relationships kind of grow over more time. But that's always the case with plays, and the actors can obviously really make or break that. Moving on, the next book that I really love from this kind of age range genre is Warhorse, and I love this cover. It's such a beautiful cover. It's such an old copy, like all the pages are super yellowed and old of all of these books, to be honest. I don't know what to do about that because I feel like it's at risk of kind of going mouldy. If you've got any tips on how to protect old books, let me know because I would really like to keep and treasure this copy. This is such an impactful story. It's similar to Black Beauty in that it's from the perspective of the horse, and we see this horse grow up from a foal with his like person, this young boy who raises him and treats him really, really well. Then World War II starts, and he gets taken away to be a war horse, and he gets taken away from his beloved Alfred, which I think is the boy's name. This is a really interesting look at World War One from the horse's perspective. Horses had a terrible time in World War One. The cavalry was like one of the most traumatic departments potentially in the army. My like great grandfather was in the cavalry in World War One, and he never spoke about it because of how harrowing it was. In this, Joey, the horse, he's on the British side, obviously to start out with, but he ends up going across to enemy lines during a charge. He ends up getting used as a war horse on the German side as well. At one point, he ends up living on a farm for a while with a nice girl before he's taken again. He's used to pull guns and pull carts, hospital wagons as well, I think. And like across the story, we see him performing a lot of different jobs that horses would have performed in the war. Not just horses, but mules as well. Mules were actually a huge part of both World War One and World War Two, and you couldn't really ride them into battle because they're a bit too clever to do that. But they were used as like ambulance cart mules, and they were used to pull guns and things like that, as Joey does in this book. Just mentioning that as a massive donkey and mule advocate myself. And we follow Joey all the way to the end of the war and have to face the devastating reality, which is that a lot of the horses were euthanized or sold to like the butchers at the end of the war, even though they'd survived this whole thing and really given their lives and given their service, and had been really good companions to the men in the war. Unfortunately, they just couldn't all come home. Fortunately, I guess spoiler, but that doesn't happen to Joey, and we see Alfred join the war just to find his horse, and miracles occur, and he does end up finding Joey and taking him home. The men like raise all of this money just to buy Joey specifically back, and it's so heart wrenching. Like I'm tearing up just thinking about it. Because as you know, if you watch this channel, I am a horse girl. I've got my own horse. I would probably join the army to find her as well. And I'm an equine behaviourist, so like equine welfare is super important to me, and just recognising the sacrifice that these horses gave in the war is also super important to me. It always gets me emotional to think about. And I think stories like this really make such a positive difference. I think it helps people see horses and other animals as sentient. I think it makes us consider welfare, and it can have like quite a real change on legislation. Obviously, this is written like long after the war and long after horses used in the war, but horses are still used as work animals in other countries. And books like Black Beauty, which do a similar thing to this. Black Beauty came out around the time where horses were used as work animals, as taxis in London and whatnot, as Black Beauty is in the book. And this book did improve people's association with horses and their kind of perspective on them and their sentience. And it did lead to some positive changes for their welfare. So I love that. Books like that make such an impact. Maybe I should write one for like the modern day about sport horses or something like that, or race horses. That would be super interesting. Maybe I will. Watch this space, I guess. The next book on this list has less of an emotional connection, but it's Skellig by David Almond. And I read this book in school, I think when I was like 12 or something, for English class, and it stuck with me ever since. It's about this like young boy, and in the garage he finds this weird man. He seems kind of like a homeless man, but he's got wings, and apparently his name's Skellig, and he constantly asks for 27 and 53, which are two dishes off the Chinese menu, and then the boy gets it for them and he like slurps it up. That's mostly all I remember about this book. I just remember it being like really beautifully written. I remember it being just really interesting. From looking back over it and like reading a couple of pages, the plot seems to be that the boy in this story, they've just moved house and his younger baby sister is sick, and it's like a really worrying time for the family. So I think the story is a lot about grief and that kind of anxiety. I vaguely remember the plot being that he helps this Skellig angel kind of man, and that he then helps the baby. But I don't know. I need to give it a reread. I just remember it being really compelling. I think they even did a BBC adaptation or something like that, or a film based on this book. And it is such a classic. I think lots of people did this book in school. So maybe I'll give it a reread and then I'll be able to talk about it with a bit more depth. But unfortunately, no matter how good it is, I am just not going to remember the plot of the book. I only remember Noughts and Crosses and Warhorse so well because I've reread them like quite a lot. I've probably read them like 5 or 6 times each. Warhorse obviously is a movie and a play as well. They kind of changed the plot of it though, so that Alfred became a soldier and then just kind of ran into Joey on the battlefield. Bit less realistic. In the book, he becomes a vet, which was much smarter, but makes for a good film and play for him to be a soldier too. But yeah, my memory of this not quite so good, but I will give it a reread because it's small and sometimes it's nice to just have a little break and read something a bit younger, because I think there's still a lot of good stuff in here. You don't have to be 12 to enjoy a book like this. And we have many classics like Alice in Wonderland, for example, that are written for a younger audience but are kind of timeless. And I think this one kind of fits that mold as well. Another book that I super loved growing up was The Windsinger, and also the sequels, Slave of the Mastery and Fire Song. But this one's a go. It's the best one. This is a fantasy story about a brother and sister who live kind of in this circular city called Amaranth, and the city is divided into different districts. So there's like Orange District, White, Grey, Red, Maroon might be one, and which one you live on depends on your exam results. So even from the age of like 1, you are sitting tests, and that's determining where you're going to live. And if you do poorly, you get put down the districts, and if you perform well, you move up. The story starts with our main character, Kestrel, who's the sister, kind of performing badly in exams, and the family get moved down and down the ranks in this social class. And she kind of says, "What more can you do to me?" Like, and she's quite rebellious. Especially once they reach the lowest tier, because like, where do you go from there if you continue to fail? And she's basically threatened and showing what more they can do to them if they continue to fail, which leads to her and Bowman and this other character who's kind of this snotty, snivelling boy called Mumpo, and um, He has a crush on Kestrel and she's kind of disgusted by him, but he's a super endearing character. The three of them end up leaving the city entirely and going on this massive adventure to find the voice of the Windsinger, which is this really eerie big structure in the middle of the town. The wind blows through it and it makes a horrible noise, but there's a little voice box that fits in that would create song if the wind were to blow through it. And there's some magical significance to this, I think, but I can't really remember. So her and her brother and Mopurgo on this big saga, they like go through lots of different aspects of the world to get to this end place where they find the box. And I won't go into too much detail, but it's really fascinating. The world building's really excellent. It's just a classic adventure story, and it's super enthralling. I really like the societal commentary as well on the whole exams and social class thing. And I've read this multiple times. I actually have the audiobooks for all of them. I used to have them like on tape and I would listen to them repeatedly, play Spyro and listen to them repeatedly, as I do. And I recently got them on Audible again and kind of re listened to them as an adult, and they were still pretty entertaining. Might give them a re listen because that was about 5 or 6 years ago and the details are getting hazy again. Like, no matter how well I know a story, the details will always go eventually. Nothing lasts forever. But the audiobook is super good. The narrator does such a good job of bringing the characters to life, and it's so soothing. I just love a good audiobook. I like to like colour in and play Spyro and listen to audiobooks because I like to just be 12 again sometimes, especially when life is getting stressful. Hi, I'm just hopping on because I realised that I forgot to talk about Wolf Brother. It was in like the thumbnail stack, and then when I sat down to film, I was like, I don't know if I can be bothered to talk about Wolf Brother because I can't really remember the plot. But then, because it's in the thumbnail, I thought, you know what, I'll just come on and just say a quick thing about it. This is Wolf Brother. It was one of my favourites when I was younger, but I can't remember the plot. It's about a boy called Torak, and he meets a wolf, and then the wolf's like his brother, I think. And there's a girl called Wren, and it's kind of based in this fantasy world, but it's kind of, what's the word? Not caveman times. They're like beyond that, but they're like hunter-gatherer tribes. That's probably the PC way to say that. They're like hunter-gatherer tribes, very Native American, Native European. There's a lot of spiritual aspects to the story. There's kind of demons and things like that, but in a very Native American kind of way. There's like a bear that's possessed by a demon or something that kills his father or something, I think. This is why I didn't talk about it, because my memory is so bad, but I do remember it being really good. As most people, I like wolves. Everyone loves wolves. Everyone, if they were like to be an animal, would want to be a wolf. That's just like a common answer. So as a child, obviously I loved wolves. I was like a little tomboy. I would like to play outside, pretend to be a wolf or Simba from The Lion King. So this kind of sparked my imagination as a book. And it was a whole series. I have like this one, Spirit Walker, which is the second one. The rest are all hardback. I just had the first one in paperback. Soul Eater. Really nice covers. Really, I love like the cave painting art on the cover. And Outcast. And then there's like 2 or 3 more books, but I grew out of it and stopped reading it. And I still have them. Maybe I'll reread them one day, but I'm not sure. I remember them being good though and being an interesting world, but not interesting enough to read into my like teenage years or advanced teenage years. I would ask like if you've read them, let me know how they ended, how the series ended, but I don't even remember how book 1 ended, to be honest, let alone the rest. I did have a quick look through all of the maps in each of the books, and they're all set in a different location. So like this one's the far north, Spirit Walker's kind of by the sea, and Wolf Brother is kind of like in the forest, the main forest. You can see here, and there's lots of different clans. So there's Salmon Clan and Whale Clan and Sea Eagle Clan all along the coast. There's a Swan Clan. The clans are just all after different animals. And I love that. Loved animals as a child, so that spoke to me. Was just thinking there, like, how annoying it must be as a children's author to write a long series like Wolf Brother of like 6 or 7 books, and your readers and your fans kind of age out of the genre as the books come out, and so they never really make it to the end, like with me and Ingo and me and Wolf Brother. That's so sad because not every series can be Harry Potter where you kind of grow with the character and read it kind of into your adulthood. That's kind of an anomaly. I think most middle grade children's fiction, the same thing that happened to me does happen. You kind of grow out of it and then you like don't give a fuck about what happens anymore. And that's really sad, and now I feel kind of bad. So maybe one day I'll do like reading the full Wolf Brothers series as an adult, and we can do a vlog about it or something. Because I bet it's good, and I bet there's probably lots to enjoy about it as an adult as well. But do I organically care enough? Probably not. So it might just have to remain a tragedy. Anyway, back to the studio, and by studio I mean over there with that light on. And the final book I'll talk about is Ingo. This is such a beautiful book, such a beautiful cover. Really love this sunset in the distance next to the blue. Color theory is amazing. And this is a book about mermaids, but it's actually super good, honestly, and it's well written. I remember getting like a chapter one like excerpt for this in first year of high school, at which for Scotland, I think you're like 11 or 12. Um, and I got really obsessed with it, and then I got the book. And there's actually, it's a series. I've got 4 of them. There might be more. Again, I kind of aged out of it and kind of lost track. The sequels are okay. I remember the first one being the best one, as is usually the case. This is about a girl called Sapphire, and she lives in Cornwall when it's really idyllic. She goes swimming and playing in the beautiful cove near their cottage. Then one day, things change terribly. Basically, her dad goes missing. And on top of this, her brother keeps disappearing for hours on end. He's with this mysterious girl with long dark hair, always taking him to the rocks. She follows him down to the cove one day and discovers a mysterious world that she never knew existed. Basically, she meets this mermaid, and they're not typical mermaids with fishtails, they have seal tails. I guess that makes them selkies in folklore terms, technically speaking. And she learns she has this ability to like go underwater and breathe underwater and kind of live with these mer people, these selkies. It's quite a harrowing experience. You basically have to go underwater, drown, feel all the pain of drowning, but once you push through the pain, you find that you're able to breathe, and she somehow has this ability. I cannot remember anything else that happens plot wise in this book. I remember like there is the mystery with her dad, and there's twists to do with that, and there's her like navigating this new world, but like can't for the life of me remember like the middle and the end apart from the twist. I just remember this book being really atmospheric. It really captured my imagination as a child. And still to this day, I'm just super, like, intrigued by the cover. I just think it's beautiful. I would really like to give it a reread and see if it stands up to, like, who I am today. Like, because, like I said, a lot of these books are timeless and they're enjoyable even as an adult. I'm not sure if, like, this one is going to be the same, but I do remember it being well written. I used to, care about that quite a lot even when I was younger and be like, okay, the prose is nice. And like the prose was probably just fine. It was probably fairly basic, but like for my age and my kind of reading level, I thought, the authors try to do something. It's nice. It's not completely basic. And I really like that about it. So one day I might give this a reread. Maybe when I'm like sick with the flu or something and I don't have a lot of mental capacity to read something more advanced, I can just kind of revert, play Spiral, listen to an audiobook and read middle grade fiction and colour in or something like that. That sounds nice. Might go and do that right now actually. That sounds blissful. Let me know if you remember reading any of these books when you were younger and if you like them as well, if you remember what happens in them, unlike me. Do you have any favourite middle grade books that you want to like always go back to, always remember? Let me know what they are. Maybe I'll check them out. Probably not, but maybe if I'm intrigued enough. I think there's probably a lot of like valuable lessons about writing to be learned from some of these younger books. After all, like, adults write them, don't they? They write these children's books. Maybe, I could read a few and then think about, what if I have an idea for a children's book? Um, if I was to write one, I would definitely have to do some rereading of some children's books just to get back into the headspace of like what the style is and what kind of the reading level is, what's too much, what's not enough. I think it would be easy to like dumb things down too much. But 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, they're smarter than we give them credit for a lot of the time. And kids that have like read a lot in their youth when they were like children, by the time they get to 14, 15, they want books like Noughts and Crosses. They want things that, say something important, that have some sort of literary quality to them. I mean, look at Harry Potter. That's not completely basic, and a lot of quite young children read Harry Potter. I mean, I didn't even include it in this video, but I started reading Harry Potter at like 10, 11, 12. I was read them by a parent and then slowly took over reading for myself and ended the series as like a 16, 15, 16 year old. So those are middle grade, but we forget about those being middle grade because so many adults like them as well. But they would definitely be included in this list if I didn't think it was a bit redundant. And The Hobbit as well. The Hobbit is technically kind of middle grade, kind of a children's story, even though it's quite advanced from a language perspective and from a world building perspective. I got read the book as a child. I listened to the audiobook a lot as a child, but I didn't necessarily sit down and read it cover to cover until I was a bit older. But again, The Hobbit's such a classic, I didn't want to include it here because I feel like it would be in everyone's stack for that kind of age group. So we don't need to get into it too much. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more videos similar to this and bookish chats and chats about writing as well. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!